All right, friends, we are ready to look at chapter 9. And chapter 9 moves the United States into its second area of a superpower, and that would be emerging with political and a military strength. So we already set ourselves up after the Gilded Age as an economic superpower. We provide materials, agricultural products that make us a very wealthy nation at this point. And one of the things that has happened in the rest of the world, while we were doing things like fighting a civil war and all these other things, is that the rest of the world began imperializing other countries. And imperialization is the taking of other countries and imposing your culture on that country. So that's what we're looking at, is now the United States has expanded. We've got all the territory in the United States filled up. So now we're going to start looking for other places to move into. So that will be what this big giant chapter 9 is about. We're also going to have a little war in here as well. So this definition of imperialism is really important. Those of you that actually looked at your Bell questions today, you know this definition is the Bell question for tomorrow. Imperialism, the policy by which strong nations extend their political, military, and economic control over weaker territories. So the issue for the United States in participating in imperialism is that it's very anti-democratic. You don't allow the people any kind of choice or any kind of vote or any kind of voice in their own country. And imperialism is, again, something that is thought of, especially if you are the country being imperialized, as something negative. The last 10 years or so, people who buy textbooks, and quite honestly, people that control school boards and other government entities, have really worked hard to try to erase this word imperialism from American history. And they want to call it expansionism. And it's not expansionism. Expansionism is really a simple analogy about Thanksgiving and your fat pants. On Thanksgiving, you wear fat pants so that you can expand in your pants. You can eat more, but you stay in your old pants. That's expanding. So the United States expanded its territory when it moved from sea to shining sea. But when it moves outside of the boundaries of the United States, when I'm sitting next to you at Thanksgiving and I expand my pants and then I move into your territory, into your seat, into your part, that is no longer expansion. I am imperializing you because I am putting my thoughts, my place settings, my bigness where you're at. That is imperialism. So why do nations want other territories? Why, especially with the United States, when we look at the reasons that nations imperialize, the very first one is to extract raw materials. We don't need raw materials. We have a lot of raw materials. Countries like Great Britain, they do not. They've run out of trees a century ago in Great Britain. They chopped down all their trees. They got to go find more trees. They build a lot of ships. So they had the need to imperialize. They're an island. They don't have a lot of extra resources that they can get. So they imperialized to get raw materials. It's why they imperialized the United States, right? To get our stuff. The second one is going to be really important to the United States, and it is to build up military strength. This is the beginnings of building countries around a strong military. In Europe, since 1815, the end of the Napoleonic Wars, there has been no wars. Zero. No wars. No countries fighting each other, no countries interacting with each other except a really teeny tiny small war called the Crimea War in 1850. It lasted a year. It doesn't count. But there's been no big buildups of wars. People have forgotten what it really means to fight each other. And so instead, we're going to build up this really big, strong military. And then the last one is to expand trade to overseas markets. That one is one that imperialists will sell to business owners. But when we look at countries like Guam and the Philippines, which are technically about 50 years behind, they don't have electricity. How are we going to sell them a toaster? How are we going to sell them a bicycle? Expanding trade to overseas markets is a ruse or a false idea to sell this to capitalists. We're going to open this to sell new things. But the new things that we have, telephones, radios, toasters, vacuum cleaners, bicycles, aren't going to work in places like Guam or the Philippines or the Hawaiian Islands, where there's no electricity and there isn't the same advancements that the United States has had. So when we really look at the causes of imperialism, the second one, building up military strength, is key. And it is essentially an important part for the United States of America. It is what makes our military, are the choices that we have. The second part of this is we come into the game of imperialism really late, and there's not a lot of stuff left. Imperialism for trade, need for raw materials and markets, and really, honestly, the only part of that is raw materials. We need those raw materials. Powerful nations needed a colony to provide those raw materials. Created an extractive economy. Imperial nations would extract raw materials and ship them home to their country. And Africa will be a prime continent where this will occur. Africa has the wealthiest the wealthiest raw materials of just about any country or any continent in the world. They have diamonds, they have plutonium, they have gold. Especially South Africa, the country of South Africa, has a bunch of diamonds. And what do those imperialist nations do? They use Africans to dig those diamonds out, and then they take all the diamonds out of the country. And South Africa doesn't get any of the wealth associated with those diamonds. It still happens. However, the US was producing a surplus of goods. So we don't need raw materials. We need markets. So that's what sells imperialism to capitalists, to kind of sugarcoat the idea that we're going to go into other countries that are sovereign, meaning they have their own government. They have their own queen. Hawaii had a queen. We're going to go in, take over. Why? Because we want those markets and we want to have access to those markets. But more important than all of that, and I'll go back to this one if you need it, more important than all of that is this one, military strength. This is what sends the United States on an imperialistic endeavor. We need to expand our military. To expand and protect themselves, nations built military strength, especially navies. Alfred Mahan stressed the importance of naval power in great nations. And he simply said, whoever controls the seas controls the world. And at this point, the country that controlled the seas was Great Britain. They controlled all parts of it. Now, to have powerful navies, you need navy bases. And you need these navy bases around the world so that ships can put in at those harbors and replenish themselves with, obviously, food, fresh water, but now more importantly, in a 20th century Navy, you need fuel, you need coal, you need water for steam. And so those places need to be strategically placed. And by the 1900s, the United States has the third largest Navy in the world. And we need places for those navies to be able to replenish themselves. And one of the things to add to that is men need to get off ships. They go a little bit bonkers after they have been on ships for so long without putting their feet on the ground. So the United States is going to imperialize for a little different reasons than the rest of Europe has imperialized. We don't necessarily need or want colonies. We don't necessarily need raw materials. We really need bases, and we need those bases in strategically placed areas. And in that aspect, that will be what we look at when we think about, we're going to stop there. We're stopping. Stop there. Okay. All right. So you have a reading on Canvas called Our Country by Josiah Strong. Now, before you guys all start moving around, make sure when you're reading Josiah Strong, you are reading him and understanding what he's saying. Josiah Strong is an imperialist. He is also a white supremacist. He also believes the idea of there are certain races that need to be cared for by the white race. So don't lose sight of that when you're looking at what he thinks about why United States need to imperialize. I think the title of his work called Our Country makes it seem like, oh, it's our country. It's all of our country. Our country means if you're a white person in America, it's your country. Okay? So tomorrow we will, a whole bunch of you will be taking the ACT. This is our assignment that's due tomorrow. So if you are taking the ACT, please make sure you have this done by tomorrow. Those of you that will be in class, you'll have class time to work on this tomorrow. All right? I think there's about 9 of you, which is about half the class that are taking the ACT tomorrow. Okay? Questions, anyone, about any of that? Yes, ma'am.
The question isn't on Canvas.
It is not?
There's no link.
Okay, let me fix it. Thank you.
Do you have a Band-Aid?
I do. Actually, I just bought them. Hang on, where's my bag? There it is. Tansy just told me the link didn't work on the bell question, so give me a second. Just one.